very warm welcome to the Big Barton Film Show on Barton FM, online and on digital, with your host Sudip Bhaduri. How are you all coping? Is there an end in sight to the lockdown where you are? So every week we've been going back in my time machine to a specific movie golden year. And this year I've chosen 1991, at the beginning of the 90s. House music, hip-hop, rap were all dominating the club scene, much to my chagrin. News headlines this year, well, the Gulf War was looming. Remember General Norman Schwarzkopf storming Norman? The infamous Birmingham Six were freed after 16 years incarceration. Winnie Mandela, ex-wife of Nelson, was jailed for suspected kidnapping. The former Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi was killed in a bomb attack. Sheffield-born Helen Sharman became the first Briton to be launched into space orbit. Millionaire Robert Maxwell, lost at sea, feared drowned. Remember Terry Waite and John McCarthy, hostages in Beirut? They were freed. And the big news from the world of music, very sad news, that the great Freddie Mercury died aged 45 from HIV complications. And if you haven't seen Bohemian Rhapsody yet, please watch it. It was a cracking year for movies. Recall Keanu Reeves linking up with Patrick Swayze for the surf thriller Point Break. Director was Catherine Bigelow, who went on to make the Oscar-winning Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30. The robbers were the ex-presidents. Val Kilmer starred as Jim Morrison, lead singer of The Doors, in the biopic made by Maverick director Oliver Stone. It was a good year for Stone. Billy Crystal starred with Jack Palance, who won an Oscar in City Slickers. Kurt Russell was fighting fires in Ron Howard's Backdraft. And The Addams Family hit our screens. So to my top three. Number 3, Beauty and the Beast. In my top 3 2D Disney animations of all time, a simple fairy tale made into a spectacle in grand style with a host of Oscar nominations, including Best Film, with the voices of Paige O'Hara, Robbie Benson and Dame Angela Lansbury. We all know the tale. It's good to see a Disney heroine being feisty, determined and not pining for her prince, but discovers love behind the mask. Some of the best ever Disney songs in one film, and the animation of the dance on the ballroom floor is absolutely mesmerising. Only 82 minutes, which is good. A fairy tale that will remain eternal, with a sense of humour which grown-ups would appreciate, and witty, hummable songs that we still know and cherish. My number 2 is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Boy oh boy. Crisp, action-packed sequel to the cult movie of 1984, once again made by expert director James Cameron. Arnold Schwarzenegger was back with Linda Hamilton, and we had Edward Furlong as young John Connor and Robert Patrick as the liquid metal Terminator. And this time a friendly cyborg, played by Arnie, is sent back in time to protect young Yob John Connor, son of Sarah. Connor will eventually lead the rebellion against Skynet, the empire that built the machines. And his mother Sarah is locked up in an asylum, for now. And don't forget that liquid metal Terminator assassin. Extraordinary special effects by the legendary Stan Winston and his team. It does lack the freshness of the first, but it's still an entertaining punch-a-minute. It's good to see Hamilton flexing her muscles, gun-toting. It's a good sign of women's liberation. But it's the charismatic Arnie who steals the show. Hasta la vista, baby. And the film demonstrates a fascinating confusion between man and machine. But undoubtedly my top film of 1991 is The Silence of the Lambs, one of the best psychological horrors ever made. Director was Jonathan Demme. Won an Oscar for Best Actor, Sir Anthony Hopkins, Best Actress, Jodie Foster, Best Movie and Best Director, from the novel by Thomas Harris. Unbearable tension and a fine script makes this compulsive watching. So FBI trainee Clarice Starling is recruited to track a serial killer called Buffalo Bill, who's kidnapped a senator's daughter. But she has to get inside the head of psychopathic prisoner Dr. Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter. And it's the spellbinding confrontations between Lecter and Starling that is the fulcrum of this amazing movie. Squeamish, absolutely. A lot of black humour from Sir Anthony as he exudes evil behind a cultured veneer. And he plans a daring escape whilst the FBI are chasing Buffalo Bill. Gripping to the end, a twist to the tail, get that bottle of Chianti and fava beans ready. One of the great movies of the 90s is Silence of the Lambs. The partnership between Hopkins and Foster was tantalising, jockeying for emotional supremacy. The sequel, which is called Hannibal, was very poor. But many may recall the original Lecter movie back in the 80s called Manhunter, with Brian Cox as Hannibal and William Peterson as the FBI guy on the case. A sort of prequel. Other notable movies this year, what a year this was. Thelma and Louise, that classic female road movie with Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis, with a young Brad Pitt, made by Sir Ridley Scott. Alan Parker struck gold with The Commitments, with a superbly energetic soundtrack, including Mustang Sally, of course. Robert De Niro starred in the remake of the creepy Cape Fear. And Kevin Costner starred in another Oliver Stone movie, the conspiracy thriller JFK, highly recommended. And a cracking Star Trek movie, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, a sort of whodunit in space. There were some howlers though. Macaulay Culkin trying to make it big after Home Alone in the awful My Girl. Bruce Willis starred in two absolute stinkers, Hudson Hawk and The Last Boy Scout, one of the worst years of his life. And Steve Martin was so unfunny in Father of the Bride, and they had the audacity to make a sequel. Movie news from 1991, and we mourn the loss of one of our all-time great directors, David Lean. Recall Bridge on the River Kwai, Dr. Zhivago, Brief Encounter, Lawrence of Arabia, Passage to India. The list is endless. One of my favourites was Great Expectations, as well as that legendary American director Frank Capra. Recall Mr. Deeds, It's a Wonderful Life, and one of his best ever, It Happened One Night. Another great Brit died, Tony Richardson, Oscar winner for Tom Jones and A Taste of Honey. He also made The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. And at the Oscars, best film was Dances with Wolves, best director was Kevin Costner. This was a surprise. Best actor was Jeremy Irons for Reversal of Fortune. Best actress for a chilling performance in Misery, Kathy Bates. Best supporting actor Joe Pesci for Goodfellas, great film that was. And best supporting actress Whoopi Goldberg for Ghost. Elizabeth Taylor married for the 8th time, would you believe? A builder called Larry Fortensky, and the ceremony took place on Michael Jackson's ranch in Los Angeles. Billy Crystal hosted the Oscars, and he's one of the finest in my opinion. He started with the quote, "We are very happy that there are no more prisoners, USA prisoners, in the world, except for those at Paramount Studios." The whiz-bang combination of Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson, if you recall them in Top Gun and Beverly Hills Cop, they actually flopped in 1990 with the over-budgeted and overrated Days of Thunder with Tom Cruise. That's one of his worst. They got fired by Paramount. Richard Gere married Cindy Crawford, supermodel, in December in Las Vegas, and his career was on an upswing after Internal Affairs and Pretty Woman. And the rest is history, as they say. So that's all from me. That's a wrap for 1991. Stay safe.